Hello, everyone. My name's Alex, and we are doing the commentary on the BC provincial government leaders debate. We're going to do a round table here. My name's Alex. We have Neeraj and Sandra as well. Neeraj, tell us something about yourself.
Hi, I'm Neeraj Mararka, and I've been involved with the BCLP since 2017. I actually been a libertarian for most of my life. I just didn't realize there were other people like me, and I was very fortunate to join the party when I did. I ran in the election in 2017, the provincial election. Didn't win a seat, unfortunately, but been involved ever since. And I joined the Libertarian Party of Canada and ran with the federal party in 2019. Didn't win then either, but it's all been a wonderful experience. Myself personally went to SFU. I'm a computer scientist and I have my own multinational company. I've been deeply involved with cryptocurrency. And in fact, I got into cryptocurrency because of libertarianism, which is a very interesting side story. So yeah, I believe heavily in cryptocurrencies and decentralization. And yeah, libertarianism is close to my heart.
Sandra.
Hi, I'm Sandra Philosoph-Schipper. I am currently the deputy leader of the BC Libertarian Party. Also, I head the policy team. I think policy is the most important part of all politics, and it seems to just get swept under the rug with personality wars and mudslinging, etc. But policy is the most important thing because nothing else will result in anything else. And we like to judge policy by its outcome, not just by its intention. I've been a libertarian probably like Neeraj my whole life without knowing it. And I've been a member of the party for several years now. I don't even recall. I do recall the day I joined. I went out of curiosity to the AGM and I knew immediately that these are my people. So here I am. I've run in 2 provincial elections. I'm not running in this one. I'm just supporting from behind. I'm a business person and a mom and a wife and other normal stuff.
My name's Alex Joel. I live in Langley, British Columbia. I am a candidate in this election, one of 4 that we are running under the BCLP banner. I've been the leader since 2023. I've had various roles prior to that. But yeah, I came to libertarianism through college when I realized that I was a classic liberal and tried to find is there a political party for me? And the closest thing I came to were the Federal Libertarian Party of Canada and the Provincial Party of British Columbia. So here we are. And we got to watch David Eby and John Rustad and Sonia Furstenau talking about a lot of really important issues, and we heard a lot of non-answers. So we're going to just go around with our initial feelings on it, take a couple minutes each of us, and then we're going to try and break down some of the key issues. Sandra, if you're ready.
Yeah, I'm always ready. So the first thing I noticed was Sonia saying we have to be investing in young people. I think it's called parenting. That's what I used to call it, but I'm not sure we need government to be doing this or any sort of investing at all. So I think from what I gathered, and you guys can weigh in on this, everything that she wants to do translates to some sort of income redistribution. I really wish she was just honest about it. The Greens are not the Greens, they are the Reds. So I think she means well, but I was not really impressed with much of her policies, even though she had a couple of salient points.
Yeah.
I think,
sorry, I'm not trying to cut you off.
No, you know what? Someone else talk about someone else.
What do you have, Neeraj?
Well, I'm going to be a little macro about it. I'm going to probably eventually pick on every one of them, but I kind of saw them all being pretty leftist. I mean, some people at this table might disagree with me. I look at the Conservative Party as just being a rebranded, relabeled version of the old Liberal Party that went through a bunch of Sorry?
That's not wrong.
Yeah. So I look at the Liberals and the Greens and the NDP sitting there, and yep, I mean, some of Sandra's comments are pretty much applicable to me. I heard a lot of talk about the middle class and the youth, and of course, yes, the youth, they're the job of the parents to take care of the youth. I didn't hear any mention of anything about anybody beyond the middle class very much. And I was talking with my peers, and I was like, well, what about the poor and the rich? And some people listening to this might be wondering, well, who gives a damn about the rich? Well, the rich people, the industrialists, the capitalists.
It's important to go out. If you think that, please go out tomorrow or today and ask a poor person for a job and see how you do.
Right.
Because we cannot be driving away our investors.
Yep. Yep. So, I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. I employ people. I've at one point had 9 people in BC working for me. I'm not claiming to be rich, but if the government were not interested in me and they were alienating me and ignoring me and basically creating programs that take money out of my pocket, I might be one of those people that are qualified to leave, and I'm going to take those jobs with me. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff that I can talk about, but overall, it's the same old thing, talking about the group of people that are going to get you the votes,
right? And
not really talking about a lot of people that matter that you're ignoring.
And talk is something that I noticed was a big theme. John Rustad has taken a big walk on the right wing in this campaign, and unfortunately, he's the best hope to unseat the NDP, who everybody at this table agrees that we do not want them in power again. Having said that, John Rustad has walked back a lot of the claims that he has made throughout the campaign, and even when he's questioned on certain issues about some of his candidates, he's avoiding them, or he's trying to discredit his own candidates. And on many things like Indigenous issues, where he has First Nations candidates, he's simply throwing them under the bus. So this is a guy who says a lot of big talk, and he has nothing to lose, mind you, right? Like he is very likely going to be either the leader of our next provincial government or the leader of the opposition, and all he has to do is try and get that center. So you talk about them all being on the left of center. I'm actually kind of going to push back on that briefly and say EB's coming to the center from the left. He's talked about, I will end the carbon tax if Prime Minister Trudeau lets me. But he's talking like he's come to that. He's talking about the reverse of the decriminalization of drugs, which is going to be our first issue. So that's something that he's reversing leftist policies. So he is right off.
Hold on.
Oh, okay.
Decriminalization a leftist policy? I'm sorry.
You just called me out. I like that.
Sorry. I mean, we've been doing that since our inception, trying to keep jails free of just drug addicts or people going to jail.
And here we are. We're getting into
leftist, and we're also not.
Well, I got to bring this up now.
Thank you.
We can't really use a singular two-dimensional line to determine where our party sits, because that's a flaw. We're not left or right.
No, that's a flaw. We're not on the damn line.
Right, we're not on the line. And in fact, the political spectrum is more than just a line. It's actually a graph, and you got the 4 corners. We've seen all that, and of course, I think we have the best of both worlds.
Well, so definitely. So Sandra called me out, and I'll touch on this because this is my first issue. So one of the questions that came up during the leaders' debate was that there are 15,000 overdose deaths in the last year, and 6 or 7 a day. And we need to talk about, like, why is this happening? And you could say it's because of the toxic substances in the drugs that they're taking. And you could talk about the policies that are making them want to take these substances, that are policies that are stopping them from getting the treatment that some of them actually want. So right now we're at the point where Sonia Furstenau, the Green Party candidate, she's the closest to us on this drug policy, and she's not great on it, but she's the closest to us. Whereas now David Eby is flat out reversing course. And John Rustad is basically saying, I will lock up your children and force them into drug rehab, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, which also doesn't work. So it's also not very conservative, by the way, John.
No, that isn't. It's definitely not libertarian.
No, and it's definitely not libertarian. So this is multifaceted.
Mhm.
And I'm not trying to give any of these guys undue credit here, but it is the toxic drug supply that is killing these people. I grew up in Vancouver. I wasn't born here, but I grew up here, and Vancouver has always been a really druggy city. It's a port city. There's always been drugs, but it was never like the 6 or 7 a day. Never. It was rare that someone would die. Yes, there were addicts. Absolutely. But even people that were injecting heroin were not necessarily overdosing because it was heroin in those days.
Right.
I read somewhere that only about 20% of heroin that you buy on the street now is actually heroin. So it's fentanyl. So it is poison. And it is people. That is why people are dying.
So we're missing the days of heroin, basically.
Missing the
Wow.
I'm not
Where are we
that,
now, right?
but I mean, it was, the lesser of the evils, and,
Right.
and also the pharmaceuticals that probably got some people addicted. Well, we took it out of the pharmacists and the doctor's hands. So
That's
now
right.
they can't give it to you. So now some people, not all people, are looking elsewhere for their pain management or just self-medication when they call that. I think it's called numbing. It's mentally numbing themselves. There were less deaths when the doctors had more control over it. Now they can lose their licenses if they're giving out too much. And and now after you've had surgery, you're not going to get the medication you need. And if you are, well, I'd rather see it go through the doctor. At least there's your clean supply, and it's also tracked. And also, it should not necessarily be on the back of all the taxpayers.
Right, and that brings up the point that a lot of proponents of the Conservative Party's platform, they want to end all these safe injection sites and inhalation sites, and I'm kind of sympathetic to it. Like, why? There's a lot of public money, taxpayer money. That's not
That's not
Mhm.
public.
it's taxpayer money.
Right.
Going towards funding people's drug habits, and I can see why somebody would be against that.
Mhm.
I'm against it. So the reality,
especially if it's not solving a problem,
it's exactly
it's
the case.
exacerbating the problem.
Well,
so I think it was a good idea, with well-intentioned.
Exactly. And the intention is to give them a chance to do the drugs in a place that they can be monitored. But right now,
They can be saved
we're
if they
exact,
overdose, so
and
they're not using it alone.
and we're hearing stories about how they're giving out free drugs. Again, safe supply. It's important, but the safe supply that the NDP or the Green Party is suggesting, past NDP and the Green Party are suggesting, it's they're handing out drugs to people, and then they're turning around and going and selling it back on the black market.
Exactly.
And it's not solving any problem.
It's creating new drug addicts.
It's creating new
that clean supply is going to the person that might be an addict or just a friendly
Can you
user.
imagine?
But they don't want to risk the tainted supply. And if I give this addict a bunch of money to get the clean drugs, he's going to buy more. I remember when this was being discussed some years ago, that it was on the table. And I asked a nurse friend of mine who works at the downtown east side, I said, what are your thoughts on this? Because I really didn't know. And she said,
fair enough.
My idea, my thoughts are, she said they're going to add it to their regular supply, because that's what an addict does. And so I think some of them did, and a lot of them sold it, as you say.
Doesn't it occur to any of these people that this is exactly what was going to happen anyways? It's not like what's going on right now was completely shocking. It's, to me, like, I'm thinking about it, and you might say, I don't know.
I was really hopeful.
No,
But I mean, like, people might say
point.
hindsight's
I'm kind of
20/20,
with
but
you.
I'm like, well, what did you think would happen? Why wouldn't they go do that? Like, I mean, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, duh, yeah, of course it would have happened. And I'm actually looking at the situation. I'm like, it sounds like what the government's really saying is, we don't want you to commercially sell it in Shoppers Drug Mart or any kind of grocery store. We'll sell it. And they're not actually really selling it, but effectively they are, because they're charging the taxpayers and they're giving it out. And now these people are going and selling on the black market. It's effectively the same thing, except with a government monopoly, which we're against.
That's not libertarian.
That's not libertarian.
Right. So I guess we'll come back around to, there's one question I have. It's like, how will a crackdown on drug decriminalization help? But first, we'll talk about one thing that Sonia brought up, and that was, she referenced Bonnie Henry. We all remember Bonnie. She was pretty pretty much in front of us nonstop during the COVID lockdowns and mandates, and press conferences daily. And she was the one who came out and said that we need decriminalization of drugs to get us to a level where we're not having 6 to 7 overdose deaths a day. And the provincial government in power basically ignored her. In fact, has gone the opposite direction. So it's very interesting how in one part they wanted to say trust the science, trust the experts, but suddenly when
I fear
a public
anyone that says the
science.
science.
I know, and I'm feeding into it.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about, how suddenly a public health official could go from being, a deity, a borderline deity,
God,
to someone who their opinion is meaningless and is just words.
What is that? Cherry picking?
It's
cherry picking for the sake of their convenience,
Yeah.
their own agendas,
Sure.
or convenience, whatever it is.
So how would, this is the last bit on the drug overdose crisis, the opioid crisis, but how would Rust ads and EVs crack down on drug use help the overdose crisis? How would it help? And then we'll come back around to the libertarian take and move on to the next topic. What are they on to? Are they on to anything?
I don't think so, because everything has been tried. Everything has been tried. So safe to supply, to filling our prisons, to, I know there's a program in, I want to say Portland, Oregon, don't quote me on that, where if you're publicly using drugs, they give you a ticket, $100. But if you phone the number on the ticket, get help, the $100 is written off and you go get help, and that's how they're going to help. They had a 2% uptake on the tickets. So I don't know what to say here. I don't have a solution, libertarian or otherwise.
Right.
Well, it sounds like if they just get rid of this, that's the question, right? If they go back to the way things were before they have these safe sites, why wouldn't they just go back to where we were before, which was the very problematic situation we were in, which is what led them to creating these in the first place.
That's it.
So it's not better, it's not worse. They're both problems. It's just another shitty situation.
I think the numbers of deaths were lower.
They
right.
They
right.
were.
They
Sure.
were.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not saying that's better or worse.
No.
But
I am
alluding to the next topic, which is the libertarian solution, which we haven't gotten to. I'm trying to say
and that,
both of them don't
right,
work.
No, absolutely.
Right?
And so I don't know. Do you want to kick off what you think we should do about this, and we'll just do a quick.
Well, like the libertarian magical solution?
Yeah, the magical.
The pixie
solution.
dust libertarian solution. I was just quoting something from the debate. Not just decriminalize, legalize it. Deregulate it, allow it to be sold. I don't know if it's deregulation, but allow it to be sold commercially. Obviously it's regulated, but you know what? The fact is, if somebody really wants it, they're going to get it. Sorry?
Licensing it?
Sure. You know what? If somebody wants these drugs, they're going to get it.
You'll get your turns.
They're going to get it. So the question is, do you want them to get it from some dude in a van down by the river? Or do you want them to get them for Shoppers Drug Mart, where, and I'm going to kind of contradict myself as libertarian, the government's going to collect a shit ton of taxes on it, but it's safe.
But it'll be safe.
Yes.
Which is
I'm going with the adage.
I'm
going with the adage that they do want it. They're going to get it.
They're going to get it. And you're right. And we actually do have, which has kind of been uptaken by the current government, a policy on re-empowering the pharmacists, and this was part of it in our healthcare policy, as well as intertwined with our drug policy. So yes, that's what I'm thinking. If you're going to be an addict, at least don't take the fentanyl by accident, and if you're taking it, do it on purpose.
If I may just say another thing, we have addicts already in our society on things that are legally available. There's people that are addicted to alcohol. There's people that are addicted to tobacco. These people, obviously their addictions are not good. People are dying of liver cancer. People are dying of lung cancer. Those are not good things, but at least they're getting their vices from sources that are safe, right? You're getting alcohol from a liquor store, safe-ish, right? We go by.
It's not like a tobacco company has not lied. They used to tell us it didn't cause cancer until they didn't have a choice.
Right. But you know where I'm going with this, right? You go buy a bottle of vodka, it's pretty safe.
Yes, we
Right.
know it's not going to be fentanyl.
Exactly. So that's kind of where I'm going with that, right?
It's not going to be.
So
like that.
people are going to get their vices somehow, somewhere.
Absolutely.
Accept
There's
it.
a demand
Let's
and
grow
there's
up.
a
Let's be
supply.
mature about it. We've learned. We've gone through it all.
Let me ask you this though. You're a pharmacist. You're a family doctor. Do you really want to be writing that prescription?
Don't write it if you don't want to write it.
Okay.
That's incredibly libertarian of you.
That actually is.
I'm a doctor. I can do whatever I want. If you don't like it, find another doctor.
Exactly. So I had this discussion
That's
with a
fair.
coworker, and I was trying to explain our take on this, and he says, "You want people coming into Superstore to get a heroin sale, and
Heroin's on sale.
heroin's on sale." And
Do I get points on this?
And I'm like,
Loblaws
maybe-
points.
and I thought maybe there is some layer of customer satisfaction that you're losing with bringing in people that are a little bit.
When I go
Well-
to get my family some chicken, I do not want.
Thank you. You're already on the same page as me.
Yeah.
None of us are able to say the words, but we don't want degenerates shopping with us.
Well, I don't want anyone
For lack of
drug
a better
addled.
term.
We don't have to call them degenerates. It can
Right.
be you or I after smoking this
Right.
or taking that
Right.
pill.
Well. Let me turn that on its side. I lived in California. I can walk into a Safeway in LA, and there could be winos, drunks walking in, buying their booze right next to me while I'm buying my chicken, and then there could be that dude who's smoking in my face with that secondhand smoke. Now I'm turned off by cigarettes. I hate them. I would actually, I don't know. I've never walked into a store where they sell heroin. I hope they someday have one, not because I would ever use heroin, but my point is, are we maybe just desensitized to the sale of those other vices? And now it's kind of like, well, I don't like that, but maybe it's actually got an overall good.
Well, I think we might be idealizing this overall good. You see in
Yeah.
hospitals where they have dispensaries where nurses and doctors are not safe because people are drug addled. And this isn't, you or I having a glass of wine or a beer. This is something else. So now nurses and doctors aren't going to be safe, and now the butcher is not going to be safe, and the cashier is not going to be safe or comfortable, or I can't take my little kids to Shoppers to
Right.
pick out some mosquito spray. Or so I don't know. Do we have to have designated stores to make this work? I guess we can.
It would be that. It would absolutely be that to start.
Yeah.
I think the first piece, and I'm gonna have the last word, only just get us moving along. But it's that people don't want users using in the streets. They don't want them using in the parks where your kids are playing.
Agreed.
They don't want them in the doorways where you're trying to perform business. This is what we don't want. So
Yeah.
a Libertarian Party government would absolutely have answers to all this. Having said that, that was never on the discussion for this leaders debate. It was never about what do we do about the people that are using in our neighborhoods. It was, we want to make it harder for them to get drugs.
Yeah.
And except for
that's not going to work.
and except for Sonia saying we don't want to, and she basically got ignored.
Yeah.
And like you said, she's the red candidate, and
That was actually
sorry,
Sandra, but
Sandra's
yes.
the red candidate, and we really don't want to put too much weight on what she has to say.
Exactly.
Because of that, and it's too bad.
And it's too bad.
Mhm.
So moving on from that, I mean, let's talk about housing. Let's talk about housing.
Let's talk about housing.
Housing. So the big one was a question from the moderator. She said the pendulum has swung from market solutions to government solutions.
And let's see what happened.
And-
We are
and-
building less and less. Also, while Mr. Trudeau is bringing in more and more people.
Yeah.
Simultaneously.
Well, I mean, I'll just
It's-
kind of I'll throw something in
Yeah.
there. I mean, I'll just take kind of a econ 101 approach.
Yeah.
I got most of my friends are born and raised in Canada,
Okay.
and how owning a house is not within the realm of their
No.
imagination at this point. Supply and demand. We have reasonably fixed supply. I think a lot of politicians keep talking about permits and delays and all that, and I'm like, yeah, that might.
And zoning.
Yeah, I mean that might alleviate a bit of the issue, but honestly, looking at the numbers and what I'm observing, when the demand is exploding for housing, you're bringing in immigrants by the hundreds of thousands every year. What is the number? It's hundreds of thousands, right?
It's more than that.
Yeah. Yeah. So when the demand for housing is going up at that speed
Exponentially.
and the supply is not keeping up with it, I mean,
It's going to drive up prices
Yeah,
no matter what.
a C
government
plus
does.
Econ 101 student can figure out what's going to happen to the prices. Okay.
Yes.
This is not rocket science. So, you know, they spend a lot of time jousting about the housing affordability crisis. I'm like, well,
Oh, and it's
guys,
because of Airbnb owners.
Yeah.
Like, what percentage? It's something,
Yeah.
I don't quote me on this.
Yeah.
But something like 2% or something. It's like almost none people. And
exactly.
then some of these Airbnb owners are renting out their basement suite on
Right.
Saturdays or something like that.
Right.
So, and the problem is taxation, supply, and one of our policies is to actually eliminate the transfer tax for everybody, not just
The PTT,
countries.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Which was brought in. I just learned this recently. That was brought in sometime in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken.
Bill Vanderzam brought
Yeah,
it in.
yeah. And it was to avoid speculation, and it was set at a price level which back then made sense based on inflation, but they obviously have never adjusted it up because they
Right.
want to keep collecting it.
Allegedly, he regrets ever having,
Yeah.
suggested it.
Well,
Right.
Yeah, for someone who bragged about being conservative. That's
There you
not
go.
very
Right.
Conservative.
Exactly.
He was a decent premier. We'll give him credit. There.
Oh,
All in
well,
all, if you take out the whole package.
if we go far enough back, we can find faults in everyone, right? Back
That
to
is
Right.
true.
1973
That is
BC.
true.
I can't remember. Now
Yeah.
from socialist
So,
class.
I mean, the NDP was scaring me a little bit with the low cost rental housing. We're going to do it. We're going to have rent controls. We're going to have, I mean, wow. It's like, if I was an investor, I'd say, I'm going elsewhere. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. I'll be a renter here, but my money's going elsewhere. I'm going to put my money in Alberta. I'm going to put my money in the States. And, you know, it just doesn't make sense. Or I'm going to borrow against this place and they're
Yeah.
going to cap what I can. I bet you they're not capping the expenses. They're not going to cap the property taxes and all the other myriad of taxes that go with this. The transfer taxes when you buy it, but interest rates will go up. Or fluctuate. We'll say they'll fluctuate, and taxes will go up, and property taxes always go up. Insurance goes up, but I'm not allowed to raise the rent. Why would I buy a rental property? I know everyone has to live with their parents into their 40s and 50s.
Sure.
And that'll solve that problem.
And here's the problem: if it was just singular rental properties like a house or a basement suite, we're not talking about a huge change in the market. We're talking about why would anyone build rental purpose properties?
That's right.
Why would anyone do that? So that's why the BC Libertarian Party advocates for totally changing the Residency Tenancy Act so that we can make it more attractive for people to want to be landlords again. Gosh darn it.
Yes, to be landlords, because there's always supply. People don't want to live with their parents. People don't want 10 roommates. My daughter is renting a house. She's a student. So who's more broke than a student? Not too many people. I mean, really.
No, you're right.
And she has 13 roommates.
It's just nuts.
Yeah. So they're all like, you know, without like 3 bathrooms, et cetera, but you know, they're not homeless. And it's like, it's ridiculous.
One of the things that came up was they questioned John Rustad on, you're going to eliminate rent caps. And he flat out said on camera, I'm not going to eliminate rent caps.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Now,
What
but
the heck
before
is
we
that?
continue, what is our position on rent caps?
It's gone skis.
No, yes, absolutely not.
No, but here's the take. It's like, why are we against it? And it's basically, we need the landlord to want to reinvest in his property.
But also does have slums.
Yep.
And that's it. And that's why the great Walter Block, he may be slipping a bit in his elder years, but he had a great series of books about defending the undefendable. And one of them was the slumlord. And he says, no, the slumlord is housing people.
Yeah.
Whereas if it wasn't for him, that other person, they would be homeless. So the slumlord is housing people that would otherwise have no home. So not necessarily a take that I want to emphasize
I
on,
understand, but he's providing low cost housing, and you know,
exactly.
for low cost, you're not going to have the, you know, the hot tub in the yard and the marble bathroom.
Exactly.
but you're indoors. You're indoors.
Right.
And that's fine. And you don't
yeah.
have to live there forever either.
No, that's kind of
That's
the
okay.
idea.
The idea is to have upward mobility, to create an economy and environment where upward mobility is not a pipe dream. It's not, it used to be not very long ago that 10, 15 years, you can move up an echelon or two echelons. You can break yourself out. But now I'm not sure that's true. I think most of us will be lucky to do as well as our parents.
And one of the things that David Eby brought up was calling on Rustad, saying you're not actually building houses, which I thought was hilarious because I don't see David Eby out there with a sledgehammer.
It's not government's job to build.
It's not.
Houses.
No, it's not.
He wasn't going to build the houses anyway.
Yeah.
It was going to be somebody doing it with taxpayer money.
Right.
And then
to
it was
give to a select few.
And it was going to be with a very skewed economic input, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
it'd be very unfair.
Exactly. So what we're going to talk about then is David Eby. Like he wants the government building homes, and Rustad says it's not the government's job. That was his quote from that debate. It is not the government's job to build homes.
Yes, it is government's job to protect the home you have.
So how about this? I'm going to challenge the three of us. Push Rustad to be a better libertarian on that comment, because already it's a good. Okay.
How's that?
Can you repeat the comment again?
So he flat out said it's not the government's job to build housing.
It's not the government's job to build housing,
which
is damn good.
That's a damn great comment.
Good,
how does a BC libertarian leader like myself, deputy leader and board member, challenge that and say we can be better?
Well, I would add to that by saying that, okay, that's great. You're speaking in a negative, saying what you're not supposed to do, but what is the actual plan? What do you do? And here's what you do. You enact policies to create a vibrant industry where people want to build housing that is for sale, for rent, and it creates that supply that is that enables the prices to be going down organic.
That policy we're talking about is the get out the way policy.
Sure. Laissez-faire, get out of the way. Sure.
That is what is stopping you from breaking ground. I met a guy at a party, and he wanted to get some renovations done in his own house. And he was playing the game for several years. And in the end, he said, forget it. And he sold the house.
Yeah.
He couldn't do renovations inside his own house. I'm not saying he's trying to build a tower in a low residential area or anything. That's not what it was. People give up. So that means how many people that would have been employed are not. He is not having the pleasure of his home that he paid for, and he's willing to pay more for, and the resale value. Yeah, all that is gone because of bureaucracy.
Yeah. So you just answer the question. Yes, we're not building houses, but we also need to go and start cutting regulations that are preventing houses from being built, that are slowing them down from being built, cutting regulations that are making it uneconomical for people to be landlords. Because being a landlord sucks.
Yes, it does suck. So you better be making money.
And maybe it didn't come up, but even modifications to the RTB. I mean, right now, I'm a renter. It's highly favorable to me. I'm a libertarian, but I'm going to admit it's horrible to a landlord. The kinds of things that could happen if I don't pay my rent. It's terrible. I wouldn't want to be a landlord to a bad tenant. And I'm like, this is not healthy.
No, I knew a guy whose tenant trashed the place, and then he couldn't kick him out. And and eventually, after months, got rid of him, but had to pay his moving expenses.
Yes.
And so it's like, why would this person invest in another rental property?
Yeah. So
there's a shortage right there.
Yeah. So we need to incentivize demand for those properties and incentivize construction of those properties.
We have to incentivize supply. The demand clearly exists.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Just plain devil's advocate. There's the stories I've been hearing about some of these developers are sitting on empty properties that are finished, but they don't want to put them to the market because the market conditions are not right for them yet. So they're waiting for interest rates to drop, at which point housing prices will go up.
They're called.
And unfortunately, this is another example of government intervention affecting market prices.
Mhm.
I'm
So
not sure if they want to sit on it and pay whatever taxes.
Well,
and
there's an
other-
opportunity
taxes
cost by
and
sitting on it
interest
too,
rates.
right?
There
But-
is, and it's their call.
Yeah,
but they're
yeah.
hoping for the market prices to get jacked back up.
Wouldn't you
once-
sell high if you could? I mean, like with it's our.
So I'm not. It's not. It's not a
criticism.
criticism. It's not a criticism.
comment.
But I'm flat out saying is housing exists and it's empty and it's being held. Us as a BC Libertarian Party, we're against the speculation tax. We're against and the empty. I'm just like blending all these stupid fees together. The empty homes tax, the vacancy tax. There's a brand new one, the home flipping tax. Basically, if you sell your home within a year of
Yeah.
buying it, you're going to be taxed on it. Not, oh my gosh, I found a great opportunity to buy another place. I need to sell what I just
So
bought.
many people that are handy refurbish the home and sell it for more and move on to the next.
Why is that a freaking crime?
Because you made money, you criminal.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's really bad to
I'm
make
not
money.
handy. It will
It's
never
really
be
I
bad.
know,
Yeah.
But that's just it. So it's our BCLP platform is consistent, and unfortunately, there are so many people that they're getting the wrong market signals. Right? We believe in free markets. We believe in Ludwig van Mises' Austrian economics, and how are these businesses ever going to be able to formulate any proper structure if the government's flip-flopping day to day?
And I'll say another thing. Just speaking from the standpoint
last
of
bit on
the
housing.
speaking from the viewpoint of the layman, you just mentioned something about these developers sitting on properties that they'd rather not even put to market, hold on to it.
Right.
I would say that sort of phenomenon is telling. It tells you there's something deeply flawed in the system. It's very, very obvious. That should not exist. There should never
Right.
be a situation where developers
Well, I could
are
see
so
holding on
incentivized to
that-
hold on to it.
The interest rates or the prime rate's gonna drop next
Right.
month. I'm hearing a rumor. Okay, sit on it for a little bit,
Right,
but not for much longer
Right.
than a little bit.
right. Because every
But
day
then
that's
when interest
ticking,
rates drop, yeah, and you're right. There's the opportunity
Right.
cost and there's the holding
There we
cost.
go.
well, most of them, I
Both.
believe, are operating on debt anyway, so they're paying interest on every
that.
day
They
that
are.
they're holding that
So they're
property. That's
gambling
money.
that they'll make more
It's a
money
gamble.
that
Every
way.
day is a financial
But,
gamble.
honestly, that's their business.
Of course.
It'll still come to market.
Yeah.
And if they don't get to market timely, the developer down the street will put his property or her property online before yours, and then you'll be sitting on yours a whole lot longer. So that's the beauty of competition
Yep.
and a free market.
Yep. If we had it.
If we had
If
it.
we had it. Moving on to healthcare. This is the biggie. Every time on any all candidates debate or any questionnaire, they say, what's the biggest issue? I'm like, healthcare. And I know Sandra ran in a by-election recently, and that was the big takeaway from you, healthcare. For this debate, the moderator raised a very interesting question and brought up a very cool word, ideology. And she basically asked David Eby, like, are you running a government on a healthcare ideology? I'm paraphrasing,
Yes.
but the ideology word was not made up by me. That was used by the questionnaire.
We are one of very few places that run on I call it the Canada, Cuba, USSR system. Yes. And it's just, it doesn't
I want to
work.
laugh.
And-
I want to laugh.
I know, laugh because it's true, or cry because it's true.
Cry because
The
it's true.
fact is, on a per capita basis,
Yeah.
we spend as much money as America per capita. So arguably, the two worst systems.
The two worst systems.
However, in the US's defense, because it's so profit driven, they have a lot of innovation
You're right.
and really good healthcare.
You're right.
Hey, I've seen doctors in the United States. I had PPOs with the big companies down there, and the US gets a bad rap. I mean, yes, it's expensive and they have all that commercialization, but I'll tell you something, this level of healthcare down there is far superior to what it is up here.
I've had good healthcare
Service.
there.
It's excellent.
Like 3 separate times
Mhm,
that I really needed
All right.
healthcare, and I was in the States, and it worked out great.
mhm.
And it was kind of expensive. I had insurance, but not for all of it. For one time I didn't. And the doctor made a deal with me. The doctor himself, not a secretary, nothing.
Right.
I just said, look, I'm Canadian. I don't have insurance. And he gave me a big fat discount. I'll pay you cash.
I love it.
Cash
Pay you
today.
cash today.
I
Yeah.
love it. That
No
sounds
paperwork,
amazing.
yeah.
And there are all sorts of examples of this through all our I listen to a lot of podcasts that are based out of the United States, so they talk a lot about the U.S. system,
Yeah.
not a lot about the Canadian system, but they talk about that. How when you're paying cash, you're able to drive down that cost by 90%.
Mhm.
And unfortunately,
That's a lot.
people in Canada have absolutely no idea what things cost.
No, and that's because
And
the person
it's-
who's paying is not the person who's getting the
Exactly.
benefit.
Well,
Yeah.
let me throw something out there that's a little bit crazy. I mean, it's not terribly crazy. I mean, some of us have pets. I take my dog to the vet, obviously. I know when I get to the vet what I'm going to be paying, more or less. I know what the medication costs are going to
When you
be,
go to the dentist,
or the dentist for that matter. I know what I'm going to
or
be
the
paying.
podiatrist,
Yep.
or
All
of
these
this.
private,
Yeah.
non-insured industries
And outside of the government.
outside of the
spectrum.
government's reach, and it's affordable. It's transparent. There's optics on what I'm paying. I don't feel like I've been shafted when I walk out the door.
And if you have, you can go to someone else.
And they're competitive. Those guys want my
Yeah.
business. I mean, I go into a vet, they're smiling, they're talking to me nicely. They don't have that sign saying verbal abuse won't be tolerated. Isn't that interesting?
Pick your top two ailments.
Yes.
We're only going to talk about one thing today or two things.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting when you deal with that level of, I'm almost tempted that if I didn't have insurance, I should go see the vet. It'll probably be cheaper than, you know.
I can give you a anecdote of a close friend / relative. I won't name names, but basically he and his dog got a tick.
That's not
His dog was dealt with the same day, paid out the ass, multiple hundreds of dollars, was dealt with. He went to ER, waited multiple hours and left. Never got dealt with.
Oh boy.
So you just got the tick?
So ended up dealing with it himself. But
Hey,
the
I
point
think if you
is the
fall in-
veterinary was dealt with.
Mhm.
It cost money
And
out of
that's
pocket,
exactly it.
but the person dealing with the same exact ailment never got treated.
But let me just throw one little thing in there. Let's remind everyone, including ourselves, the guy who went to the ER did pay for that ER visit.
But he didn't know he was paying. He didn't know what he was paying for.
Right. But
Right.
he
No,
did pay for it.
So in Canada, I believe, and this might have changed because there's an old article I'm citing here that about 23 cents of every tax dollar goes toward healthcare.
Right.
So I think
Oh.
it's very important
3
for us
cents?
to get the feds out of our healthcare. We don't need them. They do not add anything, but layer upon layer of administration.
Mhm.
So that's very expensive. And that money should be going to highly paid and numerous doctors, nurses,
my
and
gosh,
paramedical
yes.
people.
Absolutely.
That's where the money should go.
Mhm.
And BC needs to be the best place to be a healthcare worker so they don't leave. David Eby was really wrong, frankly wrong, when he said we need to be training more doctors. We train plenty, they leave. That is
Right.
the problem
And-
with the tax dollars that we use to train them.
Yeah, the brain drain.
The brain drain, that is
Yeah,
what it is.
yeah.
So we'll quickly wrap up healthcare if we can. We won't.
Oh, we won't.
I'm joking. I'm joking. I kid. So one of the comments that Evie made was talking about, well, if you bring in private healthcare, which of course is the big claim on Rustad, which
Mhm.
between the three of us, I don't think he's actually going to legalize healthcare the way that the BC Libertarian Party would.
Mhm.
But
No, he's gonna
he's
keep healthcare
being
illegal.
challenged and saying, well, if you have a private doctor, now you'll have to pay for that.
Great,
Right.
get out of the line.
And why would you have to pay for it? What, like,
Yes,
let's talk about market pricing. market pricing.
He screwed himself there as a politician. He's saying, well, so you're going to have to pay for it. Well, first of all, you're already paying for it and not getting it. So in the
And not
States,
getting it.
you will pay for it and you will get it. I'm not saying we should be like an American system. Again, the two worst systems, but the best systems in the world that we know of, and there are numbers on this in the developed world with some partially socialized healthcare. The best are the mixed system if we judge by the results, and we must always judge by the results. So where
That's where
it
you
has to
start
be
from.
accessible, it has to have some user pay, and it has to be accessible to everybody. So if we add healthcare that's private here, and there's no good reason for the private doctor to make more money than the public doctor. The only reason that could possibly be is that we are underpaying the public doctor, and that's not okay.
Exactly. So one of the things that they talked about was how EB is 600 new doctors or 800 new family doctors, whatever it is. But it's their talking point, and you have to factor in again in economics, like where are these doctors coming from? You have 800 new family doctors. Did they come out of thin air? No, they may have come out of other practices. They may have suddenly been incentivized by market signals that the government has sent and left other areas of healthcare that are now weaker and thinned out. So
you're diluting
exactly. So it's not as if we suddenly added 800 brand new doctors. They're not talking about that. They're saying we added 800 new family doctors. So I don't actually know what the stats are on total physicians, because of course
maybe some of those immigrants are doctors. That would be nice.
I can't tell you how many Uber drivers I've had rides with that were doctors and other. They were in, here's the thing, they were in regulated industries, and for whatever reason, I'm not saying they should be allowed to practice, but it seems like there's a lot of immigrants here that could be practicing medicine and are not.
It's embarrassing when the cab driver is smarter, more educated, and speaks more languages than I.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not okay. That's not the immigrant dream.
No.
And I think everybody agrees on that. And I think the NDP government is advocating for that. They're bragging that they're taking people out of taxi cabs and putting them into the hospitals. They're actually advocating that they're the ones doing that. And I'm like, okay, well, also, what about all those Canadian-born, Canadian-trained doctors that you've also been excluding? Because the reality is they can only pay for so many doctors, and the college of
getting the cheaper one.
And the college of doctors and physicians, it's a monopoly on who's allowed to practice medicine. In our province.
So it's price fixing, basically.
It is price fixing.
And
if you or I did it, we'd be in prison.
Yeah.
Exactly. So us as the BC Libertarian Party, we are advocates for not necessarily eliminating that. We want to allow other regulatory bodies to exist in competition. And that's the easy fix. We don't need to eliminate things. We need to add competition in the market. And what you'll find is you'll have plenty of doctors. Some of them will be B rated and C rated, but you'll find that people are happy to get their hangnail treated and their stuck fart treated by a C doctor. They don't need the top of the line physician for things like that.
80-20 rule. You don't have to have the best doctor in the world to get everything done.
So that's where we're at right now with healthcare, is unfortunately that even as they brag about, look at what we've taken in, what we've done, we're still far behind what we need to accomplish.
Well, also, I mean, the NDP government was bragging about sending patients to the U.S. for healthcare.
He said that.
He
said that.
What's that costing?
Sandra, so we talked
the system that you talk about so badly, you're now using and paying.
Not to exactly. Like, I'm really hoping the viewers of that debate honed in on what you're talking, which is like you're actually admitting that and bragging about the fact that your system is so broken, you actually have to cross the border and send people down there. Doesn't that tell you something?
For the system that you hate because you're an ideologue, and you want 100%.
And that's what the very first question was about ideology.
And that's what we're talking about. So she was right.
She was bang on right. So actually the last bit, it's exactly that. It's talking about during the pandemic, during the COVID lockdowns and mandates, when hospitals were actually getting kind of full, right? They went from being empty to be kind of full. And they fired, 4,000 nurses that weren't allowed to work.
Yeah.
So there was
something else, or moved to the States.
So what they did was they brought in private nurses from the United States, and they had to pay them twice as much as every British Columbia government nurse. So us as taxpayers had to pay twice as much as somebody who they were locking out for a personal health choice that people in the circle knew that was bullshit. But regardless, I mean, who knows? I mean, in a different universe, in a different timeline, maybe they made a good health decision on that one, but turns out they didn't. Turns out they didn't.
Yeah.
But they had to hire American private nurses that paid them double.
Yeah.
So not
Yeah,
only
come
did
on.
they have to send people to Bellingham, thank you for bringing that up, because he said that as a bragging
He was
point.
bragging.
It's
Look how we have to
bragging.
care of our people.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it's such an epic failure on the system
yeah.
Yes.
that
Yeah.
we can't get it done, and we'll pay for you to go elsewhere,
Yes.
but only you, because you're like about to die, but not the person that
No,
has
that's not true. That's not true.
Oh,
It's
okay,
not. If
okay,
you're
okay.
about to die, you get free death.
Free death.
And that's a federal issue on top of
yes,
provincial
free
issue,
That
death.
is.
Free death.
So in
Gosh, I said it was the
Canada,
last thing, but here we go again.
okay, sorry.
No, it's
I was
okay.
gonna say that
It's okay.
that
I'm guilty.
medically assisted death counted for 4% of Canadian deaths last year.
Oh boy.
Only the 6th leading cause of death in Canada.
It's a lot.
That's a freaking lot.
It's embarrassing.
It's
Embarrassing.
embarrassing.
I mean, and I'm all for it. I am all for it. My body, my choice. Yes.
There you are.
However, when it's being offered to poor people, when it's being offered to addicts, when it's being offered to like the elderly, anyone who
So
doesn't,
basically, someone
to
who may not be
advocate
able to
for,
give consent effectively.
someone who may not give
And that's your
consent, or
point,
someone who
yeah.
doesn't have someone else to advocate for
Right.
them.
Or what's worse is Tim Moen famously said his mother was offered it. And basically he's saying if the government is the reason that she's suffering because she can't get proper care,
Yeah.
and now they're like, maybe you die.
Yeah.
There's a conflict of interest there.
There is a
Grossly.
conflict of interest.
Grossly.
And that there we have no conflict of interest on our part as libertarians to say we want you to have the right to kill yourself.
Yes.
If you don't own your life, you own nothing.
Mhm. Mhm.
But why should the government be making recommendations like this
It's
if they're
disgusting.
also the ones
Psychopaths.
rationing
The
healthcare?
Well, they're rationalizing what led you to that position.
Well, they're
Exactly.
Well, they're,
Oh,
they're rationing
oh,
the healthcare.
At
itself
first
that's gonna
rationing,
save
but
you.
then also that.
They're rationalizing.
Yeah.
Well, they're rationalizing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, you said rationing. I said
Rationing, no, no, no.
rationalizing.
Yeah.
All right,
Well,
all
I
right.
was didn't know if we're talking about
We're-
the same thing.
I don't know how long people want to listen to the three of us. We'll talk all night. We'll talk till
know
the
we
cows come
will.
home. But let's just talk about economics real quick. John Rustad wants to unleash the economy. And I don't think for that entire hour and a half that he said anything
About
that
how-
that was a legitimate case for unleashing it. I went to their website, looked for some.
Carbon tax.
Okay.
That's something.
Talk about it.
Well, I think the less carbon tax you pay, the more money you have to do on other stuff. I think the carbon tax has in federal and provincial and other carbon taxes that are hidden are grossly and disproportionately affecting lower income households.
It's true. That part's
Yeah, I mean, if you're
irrefutable.
making like what 200-300 grand a year and your food bill doubles,
It's
It's not good,
it's regressive.
but it
It's
doesn't
highly
matter.
regressive.
But it's, if you're a low income household and your food bill doubles, I read somewhere that Canadians are actually eating. This is from some grocery association. Canadians are buying less food.
I've heard this.
So I'm
Yes.
not saying they're buying cheaper food. They're actually buying less food.
I've heard this.
So the
Yeah.
old joke about socialism being the cure for obesity, it's not funny.
They're on the way.
Here I thought I was just getting stronger because I can hold $100 worth of groceries with no problem now. I used to have
In one
trouble
hand.
in one hand. In the 80s, I could never do it.
No. So it's really frightening, and it is affecting lower income families, and we're getting to that point where some of them are going to have to choose between food and rent or the mortgage or gas for the car. And who's paying for the carbon taxes? I mean, the rich people, they buy Teslas and work from home. It's the poor
Yeah.
people that are commuting.
Right. And that's why it wasn't even on my radar from after watching that debate. It never came up because both David Sandra Furstenau went on and on and on about how the other two parties are selling out the province. But I mean, what is she going to have a minuscule share in the government? The other two, John Rustad and David Eby, have both said they will repeal the consumer carbon tax, which we can celebrate because the BCLP has been against it since day one.
Yes.
So don't get me wrong, while it is just like one piece of the economic puzzle, it it's a constant hindrance on every single transaction you make.
Yes,
And-
it's layered, and then you're paying the tax
to
upon
hear
the tax.
to hear that the Socialist Party is like, yeah, we want to get rid of that. Like, okay, well, thanks for finally being an advocate for the workers that you consistently try to
people,
be
yes.
representative for, but also you're late to the party.
A little late to the party.
So John
Mhm.
Rustad
You
has
know,
come
it
out with the
just also
same
shows that
shtick.
he's not principled, because if it was a
Oh my
principle,
gosh, Sandra,
he would have done it already. It wouldn't have come up.
Well, I was gonna bring that up also with the incumbents. It's like
yeah,
they're promising things that they could have done, and it's like
Anyone
if
in
you're
the
not,
NDP.
if you're telling me that I have to vote for you now, so you do it.
So
It
you
sounds
do
like
the right
it
thing.
sounds like blackmail. It's like, well, you didn't do it already. Now you're
Yeah.
telling me, you're holding me kind of hostage,
It's
saying.
like they're just like going like this, finding out which way the air is blowing, and
Right.
then forming policy.
I mean, we all know this. None of this is surprising, but it's more of the same, right?
Yeah.
I actually I was going to throw another thing
Nope,
in. I mean,
no. That was a
I got my class 1 trucking license last year, and I didn't realize this. I got into it a little bit, just understanding. Yeah. Almost everything that we have in our houses or our offices, if you look at it, it eventually got to you by truck. Almost everything,
Yes.
which means carbon tax is affecting every damn thing in
And
your
I don't
life.
think people really realize that. It's just a couple of cents at the pump, but every
Yeah.
component of everything has
Yeah.
traveled. And as far as fossil fuel goes,
Compounded, yeah.
only about 40% of it is going for transportation. The rest is
Mhm.
for production, building things.
Mhm.
This, any
Not to
plastic
mention
is
home
also-
heating.
and heating, etc. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's layer upon layer, and then
Yeah.
on top of those layers of carbon tax, you've got a GST and a PSD and an
Right.
alcohol tax or whatever
Mhm.
other
Comp
taxes.
taxes on
Excise
taxes.
tax.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the taxes are being taxed, and it's dishonest unless you see the GST and the PSD on the
Yeah.
receipt. Those
Right.
are the only ones that you get to see,
Mhm.
and the rest. I mean, I was reading an article about this is federal, the media, the taxpayer funded media, and how often they actually talk about the price of things. It's only like 3-4%. It's
Mm.
nothing. They don't actually talk about the cost of
Mm.
the policies.
Mhm.
They're mostly just rah for this
Yeah,
and that,
yeah.
but they don't talk about what this costs or what that costs, and think, well, this result wasn't worth that price. I mean, too many people would say that. People aren't stupid, but they're
Nope.
only fed a certain amount of information.
Exactly. I guess one of the last bits here we'll talk about is kind of a challenge again to the three of us, because we are all on the board of executives for the BCLP. The Conservative Party was called out by David Eby, saying that their budget is written in pixie dust. In other words, that he's promising all these tax cuts and promising all these entitlements, and that none of it can be accomplished based on those statistics. We've never had our budget challenged because we haven't written up a full parliamentary budget, because we have
parliamentary budget, but we've
because
definitely written up some stuff.
we have a policy, but my point is that we've never been close enough to getting elected that we've done the full gamut. So now here, let's challenge ourselves. Like, I know full well that everything that John Rustad said is absolute horseshit. He can't fulfill the promises he's made. He cannot. As much as we know that he would be a better option than David Eby and another NDP
Lesser of
government,
the evils.
the lesser of the evils.
Mhm.
His
Even
government,
that, not much lesser.
no, and that's.
I'm quite disappointed in Rustad, to be honest.
Do you want to talk on this before we finish this pixie dust thing?
Why not? I'm interested to hear what you have to say about it.
About Rustad?
Yeah.
I was expecting some sort of more conservative, let's shrink the size and scope of government. Let's cut the taxes. Let's let the builders build. Let's let the buyers buy. That's what I was thinking. Like, you run for the Conservatives, and I was expecting at least something conservative. And I say conservative, I mean conservative like a Canadian. I don't care if anyone's gay or whatever. That's none of
Of course.
government's business.
No,
Right.
agreed.
Well,
We're
which is
libertarians.
a libertarian tenet, yes. And I think we have that tagline that we were defending gay rights long before it was fashionable. We were,
We were.
yes. We
taking
were.
the heat for it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
took heat for it, and
Yeah.
that's okay. That's okay.
Well-
It was the right thing to do. But yeah, Rust.
But how long ago was he a liberal? I mean, he was just a liberal not too long ago,
like a
right?
week ago.
Yeah.
Even then, the liberals
like
were
that,
not
yeah.
like the Trudeau liberals. I
True,
mean, they were
true.
more. Yeah, they were more. I want to say conservative, fiscally responsible,
Right.
maybe with some corruptions.
Yeah.
But, but that's what happens when you get too much of people in government. You get corruption. It's inevitable.
I just think of the big C and little c conservative. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. And I please don't ask me to say who in history has been what, but definitely John Rustad is coming across as somebody that has absolutely nobody pushing back against him on that conservative front. Nobody's pushing him back.
Challenging
against
him. Are
No
you
one is
really a
challenging him.
conservative?
So he can say, I am the only option, when in reality, he's a small c conservative. And at best, again, I said David. Like I
I
said,
don't think he's radical enough.
he's not.
No.
So
I was going to ask. I'd like to hear a little bit of the Pierre Poilievre in Rostad, and I'm not hearing it. Some of that,
Sorry.
the Pierre federal conservatives.
What about him?
I'm not hearing any of that coming from him.
Yeah, he doesn't hear the same rhetoric.
I'm not hearing any of the same rhetoric. I'm not asking for him to be exactly the same, but it sounds like two different.
Yeah, he's more like EV Light.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
less able to speak.
Well,
EB, but not EB, but not EB.
EV, but not EV. Yeah.
And that's the thing about John Rustad is he's sticking to his key talking points. He's doing a very good job at that. But he's also doing a very poor job of answering the hard questions.
Yeah.
And that's why I think a lot of people that want him to win are very disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody at this table actually wants big government to be the winner of any election. But again, big government will win this election. We have 4 candidates for the BC Libertarians. This year, we have Robert Johnson and Vernon Lumby. We have myself and Langley Abbotsford. We have in Surrey, White Rock, we have Damon Tassie and Lewis Delby, once again in Port Coquitlam. So if you live in any of those ridings, you have an opportunity to vote for a Libertarian, a BC Libertarian. Unfortunately, if you live in another riding, you need to either vote for a lesser evil, like we've talked about, or don't vote at all, which there's a very good.
There is a
case to be
third
made.
option. You can move.
You could move. You don't have much time. Election
Yes.
day is October 19th.
Okay, so you got to move by then.
Thank you, everybody who's stuck around for this conversation up until now. We're gonna nip this in the butt because again we can go all night.
Yeah, we can.
Do you have anything you guys want to add?
No, I just want to thank everyone. For
I'm good.
Thank you, everyone. From Neeraj, Alex, and Sandra. Have a good night.